She thought she was marshaling a righteous, holy crusade against a bitter widow, completely oblivious that she had just handed me the match to burn her entire social standing to ash. It was supposed to be a simple Saturday morning at the local farmer's market for my youngest daughter's 15th birthday. I handed her a $20 bill and gave her total freedom to hunt down whatever sweets she wanted, while I grabbed the produce. But my ex-mother-in-law had a different gift in mind. This 80-year-old woman was fueled by pure, unadulterated venom. She didn't show up herself, of course. Cowards rarely do. Instead, she dispatched her loyal congregation. I realized something was terribly wrong the second my phone buzzed. It was my 15-year-old. She was crying so hard she could barely breathe, whispering that she was trapped. I sprinted past the organic vegetable stands with my older daughter, only to find my youngest backed against a brick wall. 6 older women had her completely boxed in. I recognized a few of them from the days when I still attended my ex-in-law's rigid, unforgiving church. They stood shoulder to shoulder, forming a suffocating wall of cheap floral perfume and sanctimonious entitlement. One of them clutched a canvas tote bag like a weapon. She leaned directly into my daughter's personal space, her lips curled into a condescending, patronizing smirk. She lectured a 15-year-old teenager about being unchristian for refusing to see her grandparents. She berated her for failing to be a good big sister to her poor, orphaned baby brothers. What this pack of vultures conveniently ignored was the truth. Those orphaned baby brothers were the product of my late ex-husband's sordid affair. My teenage daughters had been the ones to uncover that betrayal. It was severe trauma. We were actively working through it with a therapist, yet here it was, weaponized right in the middle of a public market. I didn't shout. I didn't have to. I physically wedged myself between that pack of self-righteous harpies and my terrified kid. I ordered my eldest to take her sister to the car. Once they were out of the firing line, I turned my attention back to the flock. I tore into them, but their arrogance was bulletproof. They just sneered down their noses at me, absolutely dripping with judgment. They told me I was even worse than my daughters for refusing to obey my ex-in-laws like a good Christian wife. The absolute audacity of it was suffocating. They kept pushing. Their voices escalated into a frantic, hysterical shrieking until security intervened and asked us all to leave. Even as I walked to the parking lot, they shadowed my footsteps. They hovered just over my shoulder like carrion birds, waiting for me to collapse. Later that night, long after my girls were safe and asleep, I booted up my laptop to do some digging. I reached out to a former church acquaintance who was still on decent terms with me. What he sent me made my blood run cold. My ex-mother-in-law had orchestrated the entire ambush through a massive, tragic manifesto on the church's private Facebook page. It was a masterclass in manipulation. She spun a Hallmark movie sob story designed to bleed sympathy from the congregation. She painted herself as the destitute, abandoned elder, claiming my daughters and I were leaving them homeless and penniless. She conveniently left out the part where they had already inherited my ex's entire personal bank account and his life insurance payout. But the most insidious lie of all was the way she explained the existence of her dead son's illegitimate children. You see, her particular church has one undeniably strict rule. They absolutely despise adultery. A cheating spouse becomes an immediate, unforgivable pariah. So to protect her precious son's reputation, this 80-year-old narcissist crafted a wildly disgusting narrative. She told the entire congregation that her son's mistress was actually our surrogate because my body was failing. She claimed I abandoned the babies solely because they were born boys. She accused me of unnatural cruelty just to hide the sordid truth that her son was a serial philanderer who died alongside his affair partner. She thought she had outsmarted me. She assumed that as a grieving widow dealing with a messy estate, I wouldn't have the energy to fight back. But she forgot one crucial detail. I was already mid-divorce when he died. I had the receipts for everything. Since the divorce was never finalized, there were absolutely zero legal ramifications stopping me from taking all my evidence and blowing her immaculate, holy facade straight to hell. The very next morning, my phone lit up with a new notification. My ex-mother-in-law, clearly emboldened by her foot soldiers' ambush at the market, decided to go in for the kill. She left a 3-minute voicemail. Her voice trembled with that practiced theatrical frailty she usually saved for Sunday school. She demanded that I surrender my daughters to her custody immediately. She insisted I was an unfit, sinful mother who was actively poisoning their minds. She practically spat into the receiver, threatening to ruin my reputation in town. Her ransom? Hand over my ex's estate to support the poor, abandoned surrogate children I had supposedly discarded. She thought she was untouchable. She felt completely wrapped in the protective armor of her congregation's blind faith. She was daring me to fight a war she assumed I had already lost. I didn't scream. I didn't hurl my phone across the kitchen island. I just sat there, pressing the cooling ceramic of my coffee mug against my palm, listening to the rhythmic, metallic ticking of the wall clock. I took a slow, deep breath. I visualized the meticulously organized folders sitting on my hard drive. These were the exact files my attorney and I compiled right before my ex wrapped his car around a tree with his mistress. I spent the next 3 hours compiling the ammunition. I sorted through the high-resolution photographs of my ex-husband and his affair partner making out right in my own living room. The girl had a completely different skin tone and hair color than me. No one with a functioning pair of eyes could ever mistake her for a surrogate, let alone confuse her for me. I pulled the text message screenshots where his parents explicitly acknowledged the cheating and offered him their full, unconditional support in hiding it. But the absolute crown jewel was the coup de grace. It was a chain of emails his parents sent my daughters just 2 days after the fatal crash. Those emails called my grieving teenage girls bastards. They explicitly told my daughters it was their fault their father died simply because they had exposed the affair. I wasn't just going to staple these documents together like some frantic conspiracy theorist. If I was going to present this to a congregation that prided itself on aesthetics and order, the presentation had to be absolutely immaculate. I drove to a high-end commercial print shop on the wealthy side of town. I didn't care about the cost. I paid a premium rush fee to have every single document printed on heavy, 100-pound glossy stock. I sat with the print tech for an hour, making sure the covers looked absolutely flawless. We bound them in thick, textured navy blue cardstock. They matched the exact size and weight of the supplemental prayer song packets the church handed out for special Sunday hymns. On the inside cover, directly beneath the most damning photo of the cheating couple, I typed a simple, elegant caption containing my ex's name and his affair partner's name, titled as their personal love story. Sunday morning arrived with a crisp, biting chill. I drove to their church an hour before the first service was scheduled to begin. I slipped in through the side doors while the choir was still rehearsing in the basement. There's a heavy oak desk in the back vestibule. It serves as a self-serve station stacked with extra songbooks and bulletins for the forgetful parishioners. The greeters never check them. They just assume whatever sits on that desk belongs to the Lord. My hands didn't shake as I meticulously slid my custom-made, glossy dossiers into the stack. I spaced them out perfectly, so they blended right in. I gave the pile one last approving tat, turned on my heel, and walked out into the crisp, morning air. The bait was officially set. All I had to do now was wait for the flock to sing. The fallout didn't take days. It took exactly 45 minutes. I was sitting at my kitchen island when my phone started vibrating with a frantic rhythm. It was my contact from the congregation, texting me rapid, play-by-play updates. According to him, the service started with a call to open the hymnals. As the choir director raised his baton, half the congregation cracked open their beautifully bound, high-quality gloss packets. Instead of the lyrics to a sacred hymn, they were staring dead center at a high-definition photograph of their martyred golden boy. He was intimately entangled with a woman who was very clearly not his wife. I can only imagine the exact moment the color fell completely out of my ex-mother-in-law's face. She would have been sitting in the front pew, wearing her Sunday best, soaking up the pitying glances of her peers. Then the whispers started. A low, horrified hiss swept through the sanctuary. Parishioners sitting directly behind her tapped her shoulder. They violently shoved the glossy pages into her line of sight. These were the very pages displaying her own printed text messages. They read the exact messages where she confessed to the affair and directly called her grieving, innocent granddaughters bastards. Her holy, untouchable facade shattered right there in the pews. The righteous fury of a betrayed congregation is a terrifying thing to behold. For a church that preaches absolute intolerance for adultery, the backlash was apocalyptic. By noon, the church's private Facebook group had turned into a digital coliseum. The congregation was calling my ex and his mistress things so vicious, the pastor had to step in just to keep the comments PG-13. The exact same women who had hunted my 15-year-old daughter through the farmer's market were now publicly tearing into my ex-mother-in-law. They eviscerated the woman who had weaponized their faith to cover up a sordid, unapologetic betrayal. The absolute poetry of it all, my ex-in-laws were swiftly exiled from the very community they had just used as a bludgeon. A week later, my ex-mother-in-law posted a pathetic, rambling status about how alienated she felt. She even wrote that she wished her great son was alive to financially support them, conveniently forgetting that I was the sole breadwinner of our marriage. I actually received 2 handwritten apology letters from my girls from the farmers market harpies, along with a deeply ironic invitation to join the church for support. They went straight into the paper shredder. They thought they could bully a family into submission. They thought they could rewrite history using my daughter's trauma and a carefully constructed web of pious lies. But arrogance is a blinding disease. It always makes you underestimate the quiet ones who hold the receipts. Let this be a warning to anyone who thinks they can build an untouchable life on the shattered pieces of someone else's sanity. You can hide your sins behind Sunday sermons and fake tears for a while, but eventually the truth comes collecting. You will pay the toll, because in the end, the undercover scales of justice always balance out.